Welcome to Season 4 of Purposeful Empathy, a show dedicated to conversations with people from around the globe who understand the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. Today's episode is brought to you by Grand Huron International, an on-demand coaching provider for individuals and companies. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today we are joined by the fabulous Sara Jamil, who is the founder of Compassion First, a social enterprise on a mission to create a better world, one compassionate woman at a time. She's an educator, self-professed personal growth aficionado, international best-selling co-author of Dreams Unleashed, spiritual activist, a passionate ambassador of compassion, and a strong advocate for women's self-awareness and personal agency. Sara was born and raised in Denmark as a practicing Muslim, and this interesting upbringing made her skilled at intercultural communication and interfaith bridge building. And she believes deeply in the notion of a better world starts with me. So welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita.
Great to have you. So why don't we just start there? A better world starts with me. Why is that so important?
It's important to me because that's what I ended up with, sort of like a conclusion to a series of life events that my family and I experienced I think about 7-8 years ago. But, lots of other ones before that. It's about personal responsibility for me, taking charge of my life. And actually, my husband we were coaching my daughter the other day, and he was saying to her, remember when you point at something or someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. And I don't know why that hadn't come to me before. And that's really a better world starts with me. It's almost like that's how many are pointing back at me saying, what about you?
Yeah, so it's not putting you at the epicenter of, the world change must start with me. It's more like, how am I going to step up for the world?
Yes. Actually, I'll share with you when I was coining this phrase, what we tend to see in advertisements, and it's always you, right? Mm-hmm. It's a better world starts with you. And we were playing with that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to make someone feel guilty or say, this is about you. Actually, whether it sounds corny or weird or not, I want to say a better world starts with me. And that it's not the selfish me. It is the me that has made a decision to take responsibility for how I am showing up in the world.
Yeah. And I know there's a huge backstory to that, which I want to hear about. I know that your gateway to the work on compassion came from a place of pain, where you and your family were struggling with something in relation to your son. And, that's what led you down that path. Can you share with us today?
Yes. It was, I like to start saying it was the year I turned 40, because the number 40 has such great significance in terms of our personal growth and awakening in general. And so looking back, I wasn't surprised it happened then. Our family, the year just started off with our family was experiencing loss on all sides. From my husband's an entrepreneur, his business, our home, and then my son. He was around 18 at the time, but had decided to detour from the path we had sort of coached him on. And it was actually due to a sports injury. He was a football player at the time in high school. Basically, the world of drugs opened up for him, and he found it as a way to, it was part rebellion. It was part numbing some pain from childhood, and other things that, I didn't realize at the time, but that actually led me and us, the whole family, on a 7-8 year. It was like a long time journey of pain. It was people who are listening and who know about addiction and how it affects families. It's everyone gets affected, and it's not an easy path in terms of they come, they go, they say we're good, and then they're not, and that up and down really tears at you. As a mom, as a mother, that for me was really an experience that crushed my soul. That's how I say it, because that's how it felt. It was. Why? Not because I was like, no, I'll rephrase that. It was because I was dealing with the shock of what have I done wrong? What am I guilty of that he is experiencing his life like this? The shame. What are people going to say? Which is it's common, but it is so real, that reaction to something. So, and what am I going to do? How can I fix this? The mama bear that wants to fix things, that came up, right? I need to. So that really tore at me, and my health started getting affected. It was over a couple of years, right? Turning to everyone and anything. I enrolled on a personal development course around that time at my husband's request. Actually, he was, I can't see you break down. We all need you to be there for all of us, but for yourself first. So those kind of conversations started happening, and I realized my physical health, my emotional and mental health was going down, and only I could do something about it. I was looking outside of myself for help, but that wasn't working. It was just me sharing more and more and kind of exposing my pain to others. And at that time, I didn't feel that was a good thing. I later learned, when you do it with trusted people, now I'm ready to share it with everyone, it's important to show these aspects of oneself. Once when you can move through it, right? I didn't let that define me. And I'll share later the story of when I realized that, because you start identifying with the pain you're going through. You think that's me. And I was able to lift myself up. I was able to shift the perspective of what was happening. And I was able to, instead of reacting so severely to everything, learning what responding means. And that came 5 years after the initial happenings. And it was, it was when I was going to go for a walk, and I just suddenly, you shared, I'm a spiritual person, and prayer became my actually first act of compassion towards myself, was turning to Creator and through my spirituality. And when I was going to go for the walk, I don't know how that came to me, but I just came in a state of surrender. And I was like, I not give up, but I give in. And I accept what is happening right now in my life. And I fully realize I have no control over this. So I trust whatever is happening for a reason. And I trust we will get through this. And I can tell you, when I said those words, when I was in that mindset, a weight was lifted. And I was, that year, I said that at the beginning of the year, that year is the year I engaged the most in community service work, in my business, my social enterprise taking off. And I launched my first retreat. I participated in a worldwide conference where I led workshops. I could go on and on. That year, when I look back at the pictures that I have collected from that specific year, it's incredible how much I was able to do. And that was my most painful year, because my son had been home, but had suddenly left again. Where you think, oh, everything is good. And then it's not, that's really bad. That's really painful, is when you say, oh, we're not done yet. End of the story is, my son did break down eventually, hit rock bottom, then asked for help and went through all the stuff he needed to go through, rehab, counseling, and coaching at home, basically cutting everything, and is off to he's learning to stand on his feet and wants to share his story now with other young people. So that to me brings me hope is we all learned something from this, but we all also got scarred and wounded. And to nurture that and realize that, acknowledge that was so important in this process. And that's where compassion became that medium.
And I know that you and your husband one day were just watching a Super Soul Sunday, as it were. And Karen Armstrong, we both hold her in high regard and have a great fondness and affection for her, what she's done with her TED gift and the Charter for Compassion. I think we're both partners. What was it about that conversation that Karen shared with Oprah about compassion that, really stirred you?
It was when she was defining what compassion is for her, and it was, the words were, when you look into your own heart and I forgot the actual words, but when you look into your own heart and you see what gives you pain, in that moment, you decide not to inflict that pain on anyone else. And I inserted after, even on myself, so that anyone else includes you. That really, because I was in pain, that really resonated with me. And that was my call for action, because that's when I turned to volunteering and community service at that time. Was what gives me pain? I know what's giving me pain right now, but I can't do anything about it. So can I look outside in the community? Who else is in pain? And what kind of pain is that? How can I help there? Yeah. And that became my medicine. Yeah. Because you get that feel good, the helper's high, they call it. That I was just thriving on then. That became my go-to, is I got to keep doing this because I'm feeling a sense of purpose. That's what it is, right? I can feel others' pain. I could do that before I was given this pain, but it had just amplified and deepened and especially it's whenever we would go downtown. I live in Toronto, downtown Toronto, and that's where my son was. I never knew where he was exactly, but I knew he was somewhere there. When I saw young homeless men, I would see my son. And so looking out the window, it ended me not wanting to go downtown because it became unbearable when I hadn't had contact for a long time. But it kept giving me strength as well to, you gotta keep going. It's not just about you and your son. There is so much pain in the world. Where is it that you feel you can do something? So I'll bring it back to A Better World Starts With Me, is that feeling of overwhelm as well. When you not only are dealing with your own stuff, but you see pain around you, you just go, okay, very quickly can you shift to the mindset of, why is this happening? And you can turn ugly towards your spirituality as well, right? You can denounce it. You can say, this isn't working. Mind deepened into gratitude and forgiveness. And so compassion, right? Compassion for me means to keep taking action, to do something towards that suffering. And only it's up to me to do something, and knowing whatever I do will have an impact. That's my certainty of belief, is it will have an impact, and it can have a negative or positive. Which one am I choosing? So when you say purposeful empathy, the words that came to me was intentional living. During a spiritual retreat I did last year, intentional living. What's my intention all day and every day? I have to talk to myself that way every day and know, am I on track? And so those lessons that I had with my son is still a healing process, right? But being able to talk to him, being able to talk, I have two girls who got very affected as well. And them seeing how I rose from the pain, helped be there for them, not shame anyone for whatever is going through, but being accepting, just being present. Really, that's what it is about, and connecting with each other and saying, okay, we're here, we'll be fine, but it's hurting. Acknowledge the hurt.
That's beautiful self-awareness and growth, coming out of a very painful circumstance. I know that you also pursued, you were on a compassion journey spiritually, but then you also did compassion and integrity training. So I wonder if you could share what that was all about. Like, what does it mean to study compassion as a subject, on an intellectual level?
Well, good question, because what I experienced in the beginning when I was studying and researching compassion, when I was talking about it, I was involved in my children's school, in the school council, and I wanted to bring the notion of compassion to the school community as well, is an apprehension towards using the term compassion as something religious, and I wasn't going in there with that at all. That's my private, thing. I don't put that on anyone else. And so when I heard of compassionate integrity training, Life University, who offers this, who I did it through, they promoted and developed it as a secular way of learning, because it is a universal value. Let's look at it like that, and a skill. How can we learn this? So they presented it as a skill that can be cultivated. We can nurture it. We can train in it. And you go through. It was a very thorough training. You start with yourself. It's so interesting. Whatever work we want to do, but the work starts with yourself. So we go into the whole self-awareness piece with mindfulness and emotional awareness, and those pieces, those topics are covered. And then you go, how can you expand it to others? How can you deal with internal bias? You go through all that. And then how do you expand compassion from your inner circle to outwards, right? To embrace others up until systems. How do you work with compassion within systems? And so it's comprehensive. And you go in a lot of detail. It's paired with, it's not just listening to lectures. You actually do the work. There's practices that you do. And that's one thing that I always share is compassion. Yeah, we all have it in our DNA, but it has to be nurtured and cultivated, right? It doesn't just come. You can make the decision that, yeah, I am, which I did in my first course, that a program that I did was I declared I am the possibility of compassion. What does that mean, right? What does that look like? What does that feel like to me? And so the compassionate integrity training equips you, gives you the tools, gives you the skills to practice it daily, and then to become it, to embody it. For me, that's what my takeaway was from doing it, is I don't want to just quote, the terminology. For me, it's how am I showing up every day? Mm-hmm. How am I showing up in the relationships that I have and the new ones that I want to foster? Who am I? Once those skills and concepts show up in the way I show up, that's when I know and you know, okay, you went through some training here.
So you believe that women can really lead the way to a more peaceful and just and compassionate world. Mm-hmm. Where does that idea come from? Why women?
So women as in our role as mothers. That's where it comes from. Is I realized, I guess, through the painful path that I went through, is the power the impact that I have on those around me in the home. See, I feel in society we've devalued the importance of parenting, of mothers especially. Like, you're just a mom. I've been just a mom for a long time, and so I would like to take that just flick it away. I'm a mother. I believe that the first training ground or the first environment is the womb, and that's where the first learning happens. It goes through the mother's bloodstream, and that connection stays forever. In my culture, there's something called mamta, and it's the motherly instinct. The motherly instinct closely tied to what compassion actually is, that she will instinctively get up and eliminate, take action towards any kind of suffering that she sees, right? That, through her child. And then she expands it to others she cares for. When a woman gives birth in Pakistan, India, that culture, there's, after birth, there's a 40-day period of recovering. And that my mom has, she's woken that in me. She's always been there for whenever, I had my children, and she would bring those cultural gems that she had seen her mother, grandmother do. And she said, this is to nurture you, massages, taking extra, giving you rest, the food is made or whatever, but really give you time to heal and bond with your baby. You don't see that much, right? It's not allowed anymore as much, because you're supposed to just be the super mom and fix it all and get back to work. Right. And that has an impact on our health in the long run and our well-being. We burn out.
Sara, this has been such a great conversation. And I ask as a final question to all my guests, and I love this question. I've fallen in love with my own question, because it's just always so juicy and I don't know what to expect, but I always am so touched and delighted by the answer. Can you share a story or a time in your life where you were on the receiving end of purposeful empathy and what that meant for you?
The first one that comes up is actually during the first few years of the pain I was going through. I had a beautiful friend who passed that same year. She was the most bubbly personality, my inspiration actually. We met, we were both going to a spa that another friend, she ran at the time, and she had just finished. I didn't know she was there. I was coming in to get, my service, and I hadn't shared with her what I was going through. And it was probably a 5-minute conversation, but all I needed to do, she said, "How are you?" This is how she would ask. She would look into your eyes, and just the way she said it, "How are you?" And it just made me like, I just went, actually, this is what I'm going through. And the pain in her eyes were so powerful. And what she said next is what really helped me, is she said, "Sara, I cannot imagine what you're going through. But I can tell you this, it's not because of you. Whatever your son is choosing to do, it has nothing to do with who you are." And for her to say that to me at that time, because I hadn't really opened up to many people, I was still dealing with the shame and the guilt at that time. It was very raw. But for her to say that, that has stuck with me, because that's the first thing that came to mind right now, is that brief moment, someone actually looking into your eyes, seeing you and feeling your pain, not really knowing what it is, what it could be like, but saying, I can see you going through this, but I also am seeing this, waking me up to reality and saying, the story isn't you.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That was very powerful to me, because it shifted my perspective a bit, right? It opened up that whatever followed next is, I do have control somewhere here, yeah, in this situation. So that, and then, yeah, she suddenly passed away that year, and that was actually when just before I did my first personal development course. So I still carry her with me in the work that I'm doing, in the sense she was a fierce human rights activist. She was an educator, but most of all, she was that person that makes you feel like you're her best friend. And I want to be like that. I believe I am like that now. Is that spirit? That's the legacy. That was her legacy. What's my legacy going to be? This is my legacy. Is how are people going to remember me? But not just when I'm gone. How are people going to remember me after the interaction I've had with them? Hence, a better world starts with me.
Well, goosebumps. So I think we can end on that note. What a really beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's just great to meet somebody who also believes that compassion and empathy can change the world, and we all have our part to play. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who was watching and listening, and we'll see you next time at Purposeful Empathy.
Thank you.
Now, what if you had access to your own council of coaches to help you break free from your own thinking clutter, make that important decision, and liberate you from whatever is holding you back? At Grand Huron International, you get to select a coach of your choice, anytime, from anywhere. Visit grandhuroninternational.com and harness the power of on-demand coaching today.